The training arena was alive with noise, the kind that made the air itself feel heavy. Alien warriors stood in groups, talking in low voices, their eyes all turning to the center ring. It wasn't often they saw a human here, and not just any. Human this one looked far too calm for someone about to face one of the galaxy's fiercest fighters. Jack stood tall, his hands at his sides, his expression unreadable. His plain black training pants were the only thing covering him, leaving his upper body bare. The alien warriors noticed the strange, smooth skin of humans, no armor, no scales, no natural plating for protection. To them, he looked fragile. From the other side of the arena, a tall figure stepped forward. Her name was Zyra. She was beautiful. In an alien way shining silver hair tied back, golden orange skin that seemed to glow under the light's eyes as sharp as blades. Her body was built for battle, her every movement like a predator stalking prey. The crowd parted for her as she walked toward Jack, a smile curling across her face. "A human?" she said loudly, her voice dripping with amusement. "You came here to fight. Or are you lost?" Jack said nothing. His silence made her smile widen. She began circling him, looking him over like a hunter sizing up an animal. "Humans are soft," she continued, raising her voice so the audience could hear. "They cry when they break a nail. They faint when they get hit." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jack didn't laugh. He didn't frown. He just stood there, watching her. Zyra stopped in front of him. "Tell you what, human," she said, tilting her head. "One punch. That's all I need to make you squeal like a frightened child." The crowd roared in approval. This was going to be fun for them, quick and humiliating for him. Jack finally spoke, his voice calm and even. "All right, that was it. No threats. No bravado. Just a single word." Zyra smirked. "Good. Stand still. Don't worry, I'll try not to kill you." The arena quieted. The sound of boots shuffling on the floor echoed. Every eye was on Zyra as she clenched her fist, her muscles flexing under her combat suit. She stepped closer. Jack didn't move. "Ready?" she asked, her voice almost playful. Jack gave the smallest nod. Zyra's fist shot forward. It was fast, faster than most could see. The air seemed to crack as she put her full strength into the blow. Her knuckles slammed into his abdomen, thud. The sound wasn't what she expected. It wasn't the soft, sickening sound of flesh giving way. It was like hitting a solid wall. For a second, Zyra's smile stayed on her face. Then it faded. She felt it before she saw it, pain shooting through her hand, a sharp sting that traveled up her arm. She stepped back, holding her fist. A strange heat spread through her knuckles. Her eyes widened. Jack hadn't moved, not even a flinch. He just stood there, his blue eyes locked on hers as if she had barely touched him. The crowd went silent. The whispers began. "What? What happened?" One alien murmured. "Did she miss?" Another asked. "No, she hit him. I saw it." Zyra clenched her jaw, trying to hide the pain in her hand, but her fingers refused to close. She could feel swelling already starting. She had hit humans before. They were always easy to knock down. But this was different. Jack tilted his head slightly, still calm. "That was your best?" he asked. The words weren't loud, but they cut through the silence like a blade. Zyra's pride burned hotter than the pain. Her people were watching. She couldn't back down. "One more," she snapped, forcing her voice steady. "I wasn't." "Ready?" Jack didn't argue, simply waited, his arms still at his sides. But deep down, Zyra felt something she hadn't felt in years. Doubt. The arena felt heavier now. The crowd, moments ago, laughing and cheering, had gone quiet. Only the Faint hum of the training hall's energy lights filled the air. Zyra flexed her aching fingers behind her back, hiding the injury. She could feel the swelling under her glove, but she refused to show weakness. She was a warrior. She had fought in galactic tournaments, defeated soldiers twice her size, shattered armor with one strike. Yet this human stood before her like he was carved from stone. She stepped forward again, her eyes narrowing. "You didn't even block," she said, her voice low but sharp. "I didn't need to." Jack replied calmly. The words struck her like another punch, but this one to her. Pride. She took a deep breath, her silver hair swaying as she moved back into her stance. This time, she wouldn't make the mistake of thinking this was easy. She would hit harder, faster, and from an angle no one could anticipate. The audience began to murmur again, sensing the tension. Some shouted for Zyra to finish him, while others, curious now, called out for the human to stand strong. Zyra let out a slow breath. Her body became a blur as she lunged forward, her other fist leading this time. She twisted her hips, adding every ounce of her power. The blow aimed for the same spot, the center of his abdomen. Jack didn't move. Thud. It was even louder this time. The impact shook through her bones, but again, Jack's body didn't fold. He didn't grunt. His stance didn't break. His abs felt like an unbreakable barrier, harder than reinforced plating. Zyra's eyes widened. Pain ripped through her other hand now. She staggered back a step, holding both hands. Her breathing quickened. She had given everything she had into that punch, yet it was like trying to break a wall with bare knuckles. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some shouted in disbelief. Others laughed nervously. Jack finally took a step forward. Just one step, but it made Zyra's instincts flare. She felt like prey for the first time. He stopped an arm's length away, looking her straight in the eye. "You said one punch would make me squeal," he said, his voice calm but carrying through the arena. "I'm still waiting." Gasps and murmurs filled the space. Some alien warriors smirked. Others glanced at each other uneasily. Zyra's pride burned hotter than the pain in her hands. She wasn't going to back down, not in front of the crowd, not in front of him. "You think you're strong," she said, forcing a smirk back onto her face. "Strength is more than standing still." Jack tilted his head slightly, his eyes unblinking. "Then show me what it really means." Something in his voice made her heart beat quicken. It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. He already knew she couldn't break him. She roared and charged, abandoning elegance for pure aggression. She aimed for his ribs, his chest, his stomach each. Strike met the same result. Solid, unmoving resistance. Her hands screamed in pain, her arms growing heavier with each failed attempt. Jack didn't counterattack. He didn't even raise his arms. He simply absorbed each hit, his breathing steady, his gaze locked on her like she was part of a test he was studying. Finally, exhausted, Zyra stepped back, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Sweat beaded on her forehead. The crowd had gone. Completely silent now. Everyone was watching to see what she would do next. Jack spoke again, his tone quiet but impossible to ignore. "Are you finished?" Zyra's jaw tightened. She wanted to say no. She wanted to launch herself at him again. But the truth was in her body, her hands throbbed, her energy was draining, and the human? He was untouched. "I don't understand," she muttered, almost to herself. Jack didn't smile. "You don't have to understand," he said. "You just have to stop underestimating humans." The words hit harder than any punch around them. Whispers turned into open talk. Some aliens murmured about human endurance. Others spoke of how dangerous it would be to fight a human who could attack. Zyra stepped back, frustration and confusion mixing inside her. She had never been made to feel so powerless. But one thought echoed louder than all the noise around her. What is this human really capable of? Zyra's hands throbbed with every heartbeat. The sharp ache crawled up her forearms, and even small movements sent spikes of pain through her muscles. She flexed her fingers carefully, but the stiffness was already setting in. Every instinct told her to step away to end the fight, but her pride chained her in place. The alien crowd was no longer mocking her. They weren't cheering either. They were whispering about her, about him, about what they had just witnessed. Jack stood where he had been since the start, his breathing steady, his chest rising and falling like nothing had happened. The training lights above glinted off the faint sheen of sweat on his skin. But it wasn't the sweat of exhaustion, it was the sweat of someone warmed up, not worn down. Zyra hated the way he looked at her. Not with arrogance, but with calm, as if he had known the outcome from the very beginning. She took a step closer, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "What are you?" Jack's reply was just as quiet. "Human." It wasn't the answer she wanted. Humans aren't like this, she pressed. "I've fought them before. They break." His eyes didn't leave hers. "Not all of us." The words stayed in her mind longer than she wanted. From the edge of the arena, an older alien warrior stepped forward. His deep voice carried over the crowd. "Enough, Zyra. This is no longer sport. This is a lesson." Zyra turned sharply toward him. "A lesson?" she demanded. The older warrior's gaze moved to Jack. "You see now why humans should not be underestimated. Their strength is not only in muscle, it's in will. You could hit him all day and he would still stand." Psh. A murmur of agreement ran through the audience. Some nodded, others exchanged glances that carried the weight of respect. But Zyra's pride still burned. She wasn't ready to be the loser in this story. "If he is so strong," she said loudly, "let him prove it in real combat. Let him strike back." Jack's head tilted slightly. "You sure you want that?" Her eyes narrowed. "I don't fear you." The older warrior raised a hand. "Careful, Zyra. Humans fight to win. If he strikes you, you may not get up." The tension in the arena thickened. Some aliens wanted to see it happen. Others feared the outcome. Jack finally broke the silence. "I didn't come here to hurt anyone," he said. "I came to train, to learn." But he stepped forward, his shadow falling over Zyra. "If you want me to hit back, I will." The way he said it wasn't a threat, was a promise. Zyra's heart pounded faster. For the first time in years, she felt uncertainty before a fight. She tried to hide it, straightening her posture. "Then do it," she said, though her voice wasn't as steady as before. Jack didn't move right away. He studied her, as if deciding whether she was ready. Then, in one smooth motion, he lifted his hand not to punch, but to lightly tap her shoulder with 2 fingers. Zyra blinked. "That's it." Jack's voice stayed calm. "If I had meant it, you'd be on the ground." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Some laughed nervously, others whispered to each other. Zyra's cheeks burned. She wanted to call him a coward, but something deep down told her he was telling the truth. Her pride clashed with the strange feeling rising in her chest. Respect. The older warrior stepped forward again. "Zyra, this match is over. Learn from it." Zyra looked at Jack, her mind a storm of emotions. Pain, frustration, and curiosity. She wanted to know how a human could be so strong, so unshaken. Jack turned to leave the arena, but before stepping out, he looked back at her. "You fight well," he said, "but you waste too much on proving yourself. Strength isn't just in your fists." The words stayed with her as she watched him walk away. She realized her hands weren't the only thing hurting. Her pride had taken the hardest hit. And yet, she wanted to face him again. The next day, the training arena was quieter than usual. Whispers still floated in the air about the human who had stood against Zyra's strongest blows without moving. Some called it luck. Others called it skill. But no one dared call it weakness. Zyra sat alone on a bench, her hands wrapped in healing bands. The swelling had gone down slightly, but the pain was still there, a constant reminder of her failure. Every time she flexed her fingers, she saw Jack's face in her mind, calm, steady, unshaken. She had barely slept. Part of her wanted to challenge him again right away, to erase the memory of her defeat. But another part, the part that whispered when she was alone, wanted to understand him. When Jack entered the arena, heads turned. He wasn't flashy. He didn't wear armor like the other warriors, just simple training clothes and that same steady expression. Zyra rose to her feet, moving toward him. The crowd stirred, expecting a rematch. "I want to fight again," she said when she reached him. Jack stopped, meeting her eyes. "You're not healed." "I don't care," she replied quickly. "I need to see if it was a fluke." Jack shook his head. It wasn't. Her jaw tightened. "Then prove it. Hit me this time." Some in the crowd cheered at her words, hungry for a real clash. Others looked uneasy, remembering Jack's warning from the day before. Jack's gaze stayed steady. "If I hit you, you might not get up. I can handle it." "No," he said simply, turning away. The word felt like a slap. "You're afraid," she accused. That made him stop. Slowly, he looked back at her. "I'm not afraid of hurting you. I'm afraid you'll learn nothing if I do." The words struck something inside her, though she didn't want to admit it. This wasn't arrogance. It was control. He was holding back, not out of fear, but because he knew his strength. The older warrior from yesterday stepped forward. "Zyra," he said, "listen to him. He is showing you a greater kind of strength, the kind that chooses when to fight." Zyra hated the feeling of being lectured, but something about those words made her pause. She had always believed strength meant striking harder, faster, until the other side gave in. But Jack, he was teaching something else. Still, her pride wouldn't let her walk away. "Then train with me," she said suddenly. Jack raised a brow. "Train? Yes," she said. "If you won't fight me, then teach me. Show me how a human can stand like that. Show me why my punches failed." The request surprised the crowd. Some murmured that Zyra had swallowed her pride. Others thought it was a trick to study her opponent and beat him later. Jack studied her for a moment before nodding. "All right, but on one condition: when I train you, you listen. No arrogance. No mocking." Her lips tightened, but she agreed. "Fine." From that moment, the atmosphere in the arena shifted. It was no longer about a fight, it was about discovery. Jack began by showing her basic stances: how to keep her center of gravity, how to absorb force without collapsing, how to let the body turn into a wall when struck. To the crowd, it looked simple. To Zyra, it was frustrating. Every move felt unnatural. Every position tested her patience. "Your problem," Jack said, after correcting her for the 10th time, "is that you use too much energy in every strike. You throw yourself into it like it's the last blow you'll ever make. That makes you strong in short bursts, but weak over time." "I've never needed more than a short burst," Zyra muttered. Jack gave her a small, knowing smile. "Until..." Now, she didn't reply. Hours passed. Sweat rolled down her back. Her muscles burned, and the constant corrections from Jack gnawed at her pride. But with every moment, something inside her shifted. She was beginning to feel what he meant: how a stance could turn the body into a shield, how small movements could make an attack useless. By the end of the session, she was exhausted. Jack, on the other hand, still looked ready to go as they stood facing each other. Jack said, "Strength isn't about breaking someone in one hit, it's about standing longer than they can." Zyra didn't answer, but for the first time, she felt the truth in his words. The crowd began to drift away. Their whispers carrying the same message: this wasn't the end of their story. Something bigger was starting. The following week, the arena was no longer just a training ground. Word of Jack and Zyra's strange partnership had spread far beyond their city. Alien warriors from other districts arrived to watch, curious about the human who could withstand a warrior's blows, and the proud fighter who had decided to learn from him. Zyra had changed. She still carried herself with pride, but her movements were more controlled now. Jack's training had taught her to think before she struck, to use her energy carefully, and to keep her stance unshakable. But their routine was interrupted when the arena doors burst open one afternoon. 3 massive alien soldiers strode inside, wearing dark armor that bore the mark of the Vorklana group known for challenging fighters and leaving their opponents broken. The leader, a hulking figure with jagged bone ridges across his head, stepped forward. "We've heard of the human," he said, his deep voice rumbling through the air. "We've heard he is unbreakable." Jack didn't answer. The Vor leader's eyes narrowed. "We've come to see if it's true. But we don't fight for sport, we fight to crush." The crowd stirred, some stepping back in fear. The Vor clan's duels were dangerous. They didn't stop when their opponent yielded, they stopped when their opponent couldn't move. Zyra stepped in front of Jack. "He doesn't fight for your entertainment," she said sharply. The Vor leader laughed. "And yet, he's here in a ring. If he won't fight me, maybe I'll break him outside of it." Jack finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "If I fight, it won't be here, and I won't be alone." The Vor leader tilted his head. "Alone?" Jack glanced at Zyra. "You've been training. Time to see if it's enough." Her eyes widened. "You want me to fight with you?" "Yes," Jack said simply. "You'll see why I taught you what I did." The challenge moved to the open training field outside the arena. The crowd followed, eager to witness something bigger than a simple duel. The Vor leader brought 2 of his soldiers forward. 3 against 2, he said with a grin. Zyra felt her stomach tighten, but Jack's steady expression eased her nerves. "Remember," he said quietly, "don't waste yourself in the first move. Stand, let them come to you." The fight began. One Vor charged at Jack, swinging a massive, spiked fist. Jack stepped slightly aside, letting the blow glance off his arm before countering with a quick palm strike to the attacker's chest. The Vor stumbled back, shocked at the force behind such a small movement. Another Vor went for Zyra. Her old instincts screamed at her to attack full force. But Jack's voice in her mind reminded her to hold her ground. She let the Vor swing first, then shifted her weight just enough to avoid the hit. The moment his arm passed her, she stepped in and drove her elbow into his side. The sound of his breath leaving his body was like music to her ears. The leader came straight for Jack, his punches heavier and faster than Zyra had ever seen. But Jack moved like water, absorbing, redirecting, never wasting energy. When an opening appeared, Jack's fist struck the leader's ribs with precise force. The big alien staggered. "Now," Jack called. Zyra understood. Together, they moved in. She blocked one soldier's swing, while Jack sent the other sprawling. Then they turned their focus on the leader, their movements in perfect rhythm. Jack striking low, Zyra striking high. It didn't take long. The Vor leader collapsed to one knee, gasping. His soldiers were already down. Silence filled the field. The Vor clan had been beaten. Not just by a human, but by a human and the alien woman who once mocked him. Jack stepped back, his breathing calm. Zira stood beside him, chest heaving but eyes bright. She had felt etrial control, real endurance. The Vor leader looked up at them. "I see now," he said slowly. "The human is strong, but so is the one who learns from him." The crowd erupted in cheers. For the first time, Zira didn't care about her pride. She cared about what they had achieved together. As they left the field, Jack gave her a rare smile. "Not bad," she smirked back. "You mean we're not bad?" The victory against the Vor clan spread like wildfire. By the next morning, stories of the human wall and the alien who fought beside him had reached far-off districts and even distant starports. Jack and Zira didn't just win a fight, they had made a statement. But fame wasn't always a gift. 2 days later, the arena master called them into his private chamber. He was a tall, thin alien with skin like aged stone and eyes that seemed to see through lies. He wasted no time. "You've been noticed," he said, "and not just by the crowds. The High Council has heard of your partnership." Zira frowned. "The Council? Why would they care about a training match?" "Because," the arena master said slowly, "you defeated members of the Vor clan. That's a political problem. And the Council doesn't like problems. They didn't control." Jack leaned forward slightly. "What do they want?" The arena master slid a metal tablet across the table. On the screen was a formal summons. "You are hereby invited to demonstrate your abilities in the Grand Trial." Zira's eyes widened. The Grand Trial. That's not a demonstration. It's a test for warriors chosen to represent entire worlds. Jack read the next lines. The trial wasn't a single fight, it was a series of battles against carefully chosen opponents from across the galaxy. Some would be hand-to-hand. Others would be against multiple attackers, and some would be to the death. The arena master's voice was grim. "If you refuse, the council will take it as an insult. If you lose, you'll be seen as a disgrace. And if you win," he paused, "you'll be famous far beyond this planet. But you'll also have enemies you don't want." Jack and Zira exchanged a glance. Neither of them liked the sound of being forced into this, but both knew there was no real choice. When Jack asked, 3 days. That left little time for preparation. The next 3 days were unlike any training Zira had ever known. Jack pushed her harder than before, not just teaching her how to defend, but how to attack with precision, how to use the smallest gap to end a fight quickly. She, in turn, pushed him to adapt to alien combat styles he'd never seen: spinning kicks, grappling holds that targeted joints humans rarely defended, feints that used her speed against opponents. They didn't speak much during those days. It wasn't needed. Every movement, every correction, was a conversation between fighters who understood each other without words. On the 3rd morning, the council's transport arrived, sleek black craft guarded by soldiers in gold armor. The city streets were lined with citizens eager to see them depart. Inside the transport, Zira leaned back in her seat. "You've done this before, haven't you?" she asked quietly. Jack glanced at her. "Something like it." Her brow furrowed. "What kind of human ends up in trials like these?" "The kind who doesn't run," he said simply. The Grand Trial Arena was unlike anything Zira had imagined. It was a vast, circular structure, open to the alien sky, surrounded by tens of thousands of spectators from a dozen worlds. The council sat in elevated seats, their robes gleaming, their faces expressionless. The first opponent was announced: a four-armed fighter from the Khazari Empire, known for overwhelming speed and endless stamina. The crowd roared as he entered, his four fists clenching in anticipation. Zira whispered, "For arms. That's going to be fun." Jack gave her the smallest smile. "Stay close. We'll treat him like two fighters in one body." The horn sounded. The Khazari charged, two arms aiming for Jack, the other two swinging at Zyra. They split just enough to make him divide his attacks. Jack blocked high, forcing the fighter's upper arms wide, while Zyra ducked low and drove a sharp strike to his leg. The Khazari snarled, spinning fast enough to almost catch Jack's shoulder, but the human's stance held. He absorbed the hit, redirected the momentum, and sent the fighter stumbling into Zyra's waiting knee. The fight didn't last long. They moved like they had trained Jack, creating openings, Zyra exploiting them. When the Khazari finally fell, the crowd erupted. It was only the first round as they left the arena floor. Zyra glanced at Jack. That was easy. Jack's eyes scanned the crowd. It won't stay that way. They're testing us. The next fight will be harder. He was right, 'cause high above them, in the council's box, a shadowed figure leaned forward and whispered to the others, "Let's see how long they last." The roar of the crowd from their first grand trial victory hadn't even faded before the next match was announced. This time, the voice of the herald carried a sharper tone. Final round. One opponent. No weapons allowed. Jack and Zyra stood in the center of the arena as the far gate opened. At first, nothing emerged. Then the ground trembled under heavy footsteps. A massive figure stepped into the light, a warrior from the Dravic Dominion. He was nearly twice Jack's height. His body covered in thick, armor-like scales, his shoulders so broad they looked like a wall themselves. The crowd gasped at the sight of him. Zyra whispered under her breath, "That thing is not going to fall easily." Jack's eyes didn't leave the Dravic. Nothing is unstoppable. The Drivog's deep, rumbling voice echoed, "Human, alien, you both will break." The horn sounded. The Dravic charged with surprising speed for his size. Jack sidestepped, but the sheer force of the charge sent a gust of air past him. Zyra leaped in, aiming a strike at the Dravok's ribs only for her fist to bounce off the scales like they were steel. Jack moved in from the other side, landing a heavy strike to the Dravok's knee. The giant staggered, but didn't fall. Instead, a massive hand swung toward Jack's head. He ducked just in time, but the ground shook as the blow hit the arena floor. The Dravok's strength was terrifying, but his speed was his weakness. "Stay moving," Jack called to Zyra. They began circling, attacking in quick bursts, never staying close for more than a second. But even so, the Dravok's endurance was incredible. Every blow they landed seemed to barely slow him down. Then it happened. The Dravok's arm swept out faster than expected, catching Zyra across the chest. She was thrown several meters, landing hard. "Zyra!" Jack shouted. She coughed, trying to push herself up, but the hit had rattled her. The Dravic turned his attention to Jack. Now the wall breaks. The crowd watched in tense silence as the giant stepped forward. Jack planted his feet, raising his hands. The Dravic swung Jack blocked with both arms, the impact sending a jolt through his entire body. He gritted his teeth, holding the position. The Dravic swung again. Jack absorbed it, then again. Each strike tested his body to its limits. The crowd began chanting, half in awe, half in disbelief. But Jack's legs started to tremble. From the ground, Zyra saw the first sign of strain in the human who had never flinched. She forced herself up, her body screaming in protest. The Dravic raised both arms for a final crushing blow. Jack locked eyes with him, breathing hard. That was when Zyra struck. She sprinted in from the side, leaping onto the Dravok's back. Her arm looped around his thick neck, her legs clamping against his torso. Jack didn't miss the opening. He drove a precision strike into the giant's knee again, this time with all his weight behind it. There was a sickening crack. The Dravic roared in pain, collapsing to one knee. Zyra tightened her hold, cutting off his breath. Jack stepped in and delivered a final palm strike to the side of the giant's head. The Dravik fell forward, hitting the arena floor with a thunderous crash. Silence, then thunderous applause. The High Council rose from their seats. The announcer's voice boomed, "Winners of the grand trial, the human wall and the silver blade." Zyra grinned despite the pain. Silver blade? That's new. Jack gave the faintest smile. Could be worse. As the crowd's cheers filled the arena, Jack glanced toward the council. Most of them were clapping politely, but one figure in the shadows didn't move. They simply watched, their gaze cold, calculating. Later, as they were escorted out, Zyra leaned closer to Jack. "We did it. We won." Jack nodded, but his eyes were distant. The trial wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Now, they'll be watching us. Zyra raised a brow. "And that's a bad thing." Jack's voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it. "It means the next fight won't be in an arena. It'll be in the real galaxy, and there, losing has a different price." They stepped onto the transport, the crowd still chanting their names. Above them, the alien sky stretched wide and endless, filled with both opportunity and danger. Now, they had won. But both knew the war for respect had only just begun.